And we are live. So, good morning or evening, everybody. Welcome to Awkward Devs number 113. Um, we have mostly London stuff on the agenda today. There's been a lot of work on that over the past couple weeks. Um, no background today. No, I guess I can kind of blur it or put my Ethereum background if people prefer that. Back in the blockchain. Cool. Okay, so for London, first thing, so every team I think was syncing to Baikal this week, which was the new DevNet. I don't know if someone wants to give a quick summary of where things are at with the network.
I can give you Baikal status. So in each stats we have 5 nodes, 2 Geth, 2 Netherminds, and 1 Bezu. They are all in sync. As far as I know, TurboGeth is in sync too. I'm not sure about Open Ethereum. In Nethermind, we implemented refunds. The last one, 559 gas limit changes, and EIP 3541. All clients seem to be working fine, but it will be good to test it in the same way as Joachim from the Ethereum JS team tested the allowed network. So Joachim, feel free to do that. That's all, I think.
Yeah, is anyone from Open Ethereum on the call to give a quick update of where they are? I thought I saw, I'm not sure that they posted a boot node, but yeah, if anyone from the team wants to share where you're at.
Yeah, we have the updated issue on the GitHub. We are still missing the gas refunds lately implemented for the Baikal, so we're not able to sync at the moment.
Okay, so this is the last one you have to implement?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So what do people feel makes sense in terms of next steps for Baikal? My personal preference is probably to keep it up and running basically until the fork. And the reason for that is it gives basically tooling and whatnot, a network that they can use that's already up if they want to play with 1559 or stuff like that. Does anyone disagree with that? Do people think there's other things we should do with the network?
I think it sounds good. I don't know how many transactions has been sent over it. I personally have not done anything, but it would be good if you keep it up so other people can experiment more with all the opcodes and going up and down in the gas limit. There were some changes made on the 1559 spec regarding to how much the gas limit, the mechanics for how gas limit can vary up and down. So it would be good if that also is tested. I'm not sure if that has been covered. I suspect not.
Got it. Yeah. So I agree that makes sense. I know Abdel had built a tool that we could use to spam the the networks we built when we were developing 1559. I suspect we should be able to use that on Baikal as well, assuming there's an address with enough ETH. So in general, just keeping the network up, obviously letting Open Ethereum the time to sync up to it, having both, manual transactions on it and people playing around with it, and then trying to make sure we test the limits of the gas limit up and down. That seems reasonable. Anything else on Baikal? Okay. So next up on the agenda, I had the EIP 3541, which is the EIP by AXIC, which has been implemented in Baikal. We didn't want to make a decision about inclusion in London last time because it was kind of the first time that it was brought up on the call. I'm curious how the people feel about including it in London now. It seems everybody's had it implemented, so yeah. Any thoughts, objections, support?
I'm in support.
Let's include it.
Cool. Anyone disagree with that? Okay. I feel much better because when we take stuff out at the last minute, that's usually a bit risky. So let's include 3541 into London. I'll update the spec right after this call. Similarly, so 2 calls ago, I think we agreed to move back the difficulty bomb to December 1st, roughly, rather than Q2, which was originally proposed in EIP 3238. James has been working on an alternative EIP, so 3554, which pushes back the difficulty bomb. So I think the first increase would happen, I believe, around December 7th, you said, James. I don't know, do you want to take a minute to walk us through, I know you worked on some back tests for it to make sure it lined up right. Do you want to?
Yeah. So there's a script in the EIP itself you can run to check at this, and it looks at the difficulty adjust coefficient based on the current epic, what it would be that's kind of pushing up the difficulty, so the block time increases. And I went back and looked at the last 3 times that we first saw the difficulty bomb go off, and all of them were right as it hit 0.1 on this ratio, which if we were to do this 9,700,000, then 0.1 is reached on the December 7th, which is when the first time that epic of every 10,000 blocks, the epic switches over on December 7th. So it looks like it's pretty good. I don't know if anyone else looked at it, but I went on to as many avenues as I thought of to double check. And so at this point, I'm pretty confident about it. The only risk is if the difficulty on the network changes significantly, then when that 0.1 ratio happens, could happen earlier or later.
Yeah, I just eyeballed it and looked at the numbers. The current EIP that we added in Muir Glacier, which is going to go out soon, and basically we're adding an extra 700,000 blocks to that EIP, which is roughly 4 months. So July plus 4 months was December. So that was my very low tech way of eyeballing it. I think I saw Geth already has a PR open for this. I don't know how did
we merged the original number, and we have a PR for the second. So we have 9.5, but we have an open PR for 9.7 million.
Okay. Does anyone else have thoughts about this? Yeah, sorry. There was a comment by James in the chat that July plus 4 months is November, but the bomb was going off end of July, not beginning of July. So it's basically end of November, not November 1st. Cool. Does anyone, is everyone okay basically moving this into London and updating 3238 to have instead 3554? No objections?
Yes.
Yeah, last call. Okay, so in London, this is going very quickly. Now to something I think might take a little more time on the call. JSON RPC naming. I was hoping we could resolve this async, but it seems like it's an impossible problem. Basically,
Tim, can I say one thing on the bomb first?
Go for it, yeah.
Which is, I think if there's some way to schedule this, we should come back in 2 months and rerun and have someone rerun those numbers to check that the ratio doesn't change at all. So like
Okay.
4 or 5 all-core devs from now.
Yes, I will absolutely do that. Yeah.
Sweet.
Good. Yeah, good call. Cool. JSON RPC naming. So I'll try to summarize where things were at, and hopefully we can come to a decision on it now. And the main reason why it would be really good to come to a decision on it now is we're building these test nets for infrastructure providers, and basically the naming of the fields is the main thing that's blocking people from playing around with this. Obviously they can support it and change the names in the future, but that's kind of a bad experience. So I think it was 2 weeks ago, the Get team put up a gist talking about basically the JSON RPC renaming and the header field renaming. We got the pretty quick consensus on how we would rename the headers. But for the JSON RPC, the argument from Geth was we should use kind of variable names that were shorter than the ones in the EIP. So the EIP uses max priority fee per gas and max fee per gas, and stuff that's kind of aligned with the other naming conventions that are used in JSON RPC. So the two that were proposed were gas tip cap and gas fee cap, which obviously aligns with gas limit, gas use, gas price. Then we kind of had this long conversation on Discord with a vote, and it seemed people liked base fee per gas to specify the base fee, priority fee per gas for the priority fee, and fee cap per gas for the fee cap. One problem with that is that priority fee per gas doesn't make it clear it's a maximum value, so it's not actually the value that you pay, but it's the maximum that you're willing to pay. So the obvious suggestion there is you change that the max priority fee per gas. Then you're basically back to a spot where 2 of the 3 terms have the same name as the EAP. So it would be weird to also not switch back to just using the EAP. Obviously, Get's suggestions was moving away from using the terms in the EAP. And the one concern that people seem to have with Get's suggestions, or at least the biggest one, was people didn't like the fee term. So instead of that, we could use gas price cap. One challenge with gas price cap is it's obviously very close to gas price, and it might be more error prone. And people also don't like the tip team term. So an easy fix there is gas priority cap. So that's kind of where things are at. I don't know. Yeah, if people have opinions or thoughts, this is the time.
Yeah, sorry for asking this question right when you summarized everything, but is there anywhere a kind of concrete summary / suggestion of what the current or what's the most recent proposal
is?
is?
I just posted it on GitHub. I added a comment to Peter's gist yesterday to summarize it. So I think, as I understand it, not everybody agrees on this, obviously, but base fee per gas seems universally agreed upon. And the two that I think could work for the other fields would be gas price cap and gas priority cap. So
I don't know. This is kind of hard to really bike shed the specifics of the naming just with voice.
to be
I
fair, it was kind of
personally,
hard with text as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
I personally prefer to not have the per gas postfix. I'd rather have a gas prefix and then describe. I think that lends itself to shorter names, and it's similar to how we already described the gas price.
I was leaning towards that earlier because of the following the reasoning that gas price, oh, that meant per gas. But then I read what Micah wrote that, yeah, it's a different thing because with the gas price, it's kind of obvious because of the connotations with price that it's the price you pay per unit. Whereas for the others, I don't actually. I think it's more clear if it's per gas than if it's a gas prefix. So yeah, I'm leaning. I'm personally more in favor of per gas as it is more explicit.
I'm sorry. So this is just about the naming right now.
Yes.
Yes, and it might seem like it's a waste of time, but we tried for a week.
Yes, I think nobody gives a shit. Like, let's
But
move
I
on to
think-
something else.
I think you're wrong there, Artem.
Yeah. My experience this week
very
is
wrong.
people have pretty strong opinions about it and are not willing to or at least it's hard to get the consensus on it async. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing to kind of bear in mind is that we can make this choice once and it's going to be a pain in the ass to change it later. And if we do a bad choice, it means the UX is going to suck and it's going to be confusing and people are going to shoot themselves in the foot and they're going to not understand that this is actually not the value. The cost for me is going to be multiplied by 25,000 because it's per gas and it's not an absolute. So if we can avoid that, I do think it's important.
Yeah, and one thing, I think Micah was the one who mentioned that on Discord. A lot of apps will just pass through, these parameters to their users. Like they'll take whatever's from JSON-RPC, literally expose that. So yeah, I agree. If we can have stuff that's more descriptive, that probably makes sense.
Matt, did you have another reason to prefer the gas prefixed ones other than shortness and consistency, I guess?
I think those are my main. This is the main reason. If we start doing max priority fee per gas, now you're having 50% or more just describe it, trying to set up what this even means. You're saying max, you're saying per gas, you're saying priority fee. That's the thing. Whereas you could just say gas fee cap or gas tip cap. And so now it's I find that easier to reason about. And I don't really agree so much with Micah's reasoning that price is what's giving it the per unit of gas. I think that I think gas is what's saying that this is per gas, because you could have TX price and that would not be, per gas still, that would be per TX. So I think I'm one of the few people at this point still on the gas prefix train. So I'm not going to die on the hill, but I prefer it. And maybe my preference is unfounded because I have spent the last few months staring at these names, and the thought of having to type 2x more characters to do something is probably not something that we should be using to decide how everyone else is going to interact with it. But those are my thoughts.
I will personally buy you a text editor that has autocomplete.
Oh, I thought you were personally going to hire someone for me just to fill out the remaining characters.
Excuse me, I need to finish this for you. Okay, go ahead.
He will write you a macro so that those names are just one keystroke.
We could fill a grant out for that, I think.
So I guess does aside from my client, does anybody else like strongly in favor of the gas? Because I think Martin and Peter's not on the call, but he was also in favor of that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. So I don't speak on behalf of the whole gas team, personally.
So nobody else willing to defend gas. In that case, it feels like there's also more clarity in just we would be using the same. We would be using basically the same terms as the EAP, right? So we would have max priority fee per gas, fee cap per gas, and base fee per gas, and that would just yeah. So we basically do not need additional names for JSON RPC. Does anyone oppose that? Last chance. If not, I will let the folks working on the spec for JSON RPC know. Oh, somebody's pinging Ansgar. Is he on? Yes, he is on the call.
Oh yeah, I think I'm weakly kind of in agreement with Lightline, but I don't have like any strong opinion. I personally don't think like I also have like a little bit of problem with priority fee, but I think the proper place to discuss that would just be the EAP itself. So.
And luckily,
Yeah, regarding
when we have the merge, we will need to do some changes to 1559 so we can reopen all those cans of worms.
Regarding priority fee, that like the word priority there, we've gone between I think 6 different words in the EIP, trying to find a solution. If someone has something novel and new, we can give it a try. Everything is problematic, and I think the core reason why we're struggling is because that particular value means 2 different things to different people. So if you are gas warring, then it is the thing that gets you to the front of the line. If you are just a regular user with 1559, it is the thing that gets you into the block. And so it's serving dual purposes, sort of. And so finding a name that satisfies both is very hard. And so we end up keep changing it to kind of just swap between naming it for favor the one thing, then we name it favor the other, and then back and forth. If anybody can come up with a word that handles both, please share it.
And we will use that word any too. Yeah, I guess, okay. So let's just stick to using the terms that are in the EAP, expose that in the JSON RPC, and hopefully we'll have a JSON RPC spec ready in the next week or so. Anything else on JSON RPC? Okay. I guess the last thing I had on London is trying to figure out how people feel with regards to timing for the upgrade. I believe everybody, aside from Open Ethereum, has the EIPs fully implemented. A couple, months or calls ago, we had kind of this tentative timeline where we would basically try to, agree to a client freeze today, which is, I think, where we're at, so that teams would have another 2 weeks to release a client that's London compatible. And then we could have the first testnet fork on June 9th and the first mainnet fork on July 14th. How do people generally feel about that schedule? Do they feel it's something that's realistic? Is it something we want to push back a bit? Yeah, any thoughts there?
I mean, I think that it is a bit optimistic, and I think that maybe I have the feeling that this might be the most YOLO hard fork we've done so far. But yeah, still, I think maybe we should just bite the bullet and do it anyway. So because we have this, we need to get the next hard fork out, and we've been working on 5059 for a long time. I think the big problem, at least for the Get team, is that Well, I mean, the consensus changes are one thing, but there's, a lot of things that need to be touched in the transaction pool logic. There's a lot of changes need to be done for the miner and for various other subsystems. So it's a big upgrade, and we're not going to be able to do a client freeze anytime soon, I think, because there are still, even if we have the base functionality, we don't even have that one merged. But even if we did, there would still be another 2 or 3 PRs, follow-up PRs to add this other stuff. So I think that we can live with the dates, I think, but I'm just throwing it out there that we need to do a lot of testing.
Is this something where like changing it by 2 weeks would, help a lot? Or is it something where, in a perfect world, you'd have 2 extra months to do the testing? And I guess, the reason I asked that is this date was mostly set because of the difficulty bomb. There's been kind of an increase in hash rate on the network. So I suspect we probably have, a few weeks of leeway if that makes a big difference for clients. We definitely don't have like months of leeway. So that's kind of
So for me personally, I always think that testnets ultimately are there to test, to prepare for mainnet. So I don't think we should postpone testnet deployments. I think if anything, we should do them sooner so that we have more time to actually test everything on the testnet before it hits mainnet. But I know that other people feel differently about testnets.
Got it. How do other client teams feel? Besu, Nethermind, Open Ethereum, TurboGet?
We are generally okay with the timings. And yeah, I think I agree that we want to say the community to move with the tooling and experimentation. And if they have the testnets earlier, that's always the better. I think that date was announced for a while and we haven't changed it in a month or so. If we see any problems whatsoever in the testnets, then we should review and consider then to move mainnet a bit further down. But for now, I would stick to this mid-July date.
I agree that I don't think we should be postponing the testnets. But also, I don't know whether we're ready for a code freeze yet. We definitely have the meat of the EAPs all in, but similar ancillary logic like mining and transaction pool, we need to double check.
Open Ethereum?
Yeah, I agree with the last statement. We're not fully prepared for the freezing, and we're already a bit late for that. But in general, for the July 14, I think that won't be a problem.
Okay. And so right now, basically the first testnet would be on June 9th, which is 3-ish weeks. Is that right? Yeah, 3.5 weeks. Martin seemed to feel that keeping it close is better. Does everybody also agree with that? Because we could also push the testnet back 1 week if that made a difference. But then it's like we get less time on testnet before we go on mainnet. Would be, I guess, if people want to push back the testnets to get more time for the client freeze, now's the time to speak up. Otherwise, we can keep the first one on July 9th. June 9th.
Which is the first one?
So I had Robston, the first one, but this is just because that's what we did for Berlin. So Robston, Gordy, Rinkeby, we can absolutely change them if there's a reason to.
And the mainnet date would be?
The mainnet date is July 14th, as of now. So the Robston testnet would be live for like 6 weeks before the hard fork. Then it would be 5 weeks, then 5 weeks, then 4 weeks, then 3 weeks between the last testnet and mainnet. And obviously, if anything goes wrong on the testnets and whatnot, we can push back the mainnet date. Yeah, but assuming everything goes smoothly, that would be the schedule.
I think that sounds okay.
Yes, so James has a comment of like, if we push mainnet 2 weeks back, we could get 5 weeks on the testnets. Yeah. Okay. So basically, let's do that. I had proposed some blocks for those dates in the GitHub issue. Yeah, so just if people want to to put them in the clients now. But basically a block on June 9th on Robston would be 103.99.301. June 16 on Gordy would be 497.9794. June 23rd on Rinkeby would be 8813.188. And then the mainnet fork block on July 14th would be 12833.000. So unless anything is wrong with those blocks, I double checked them yesterday. I propose we go with those, and this way clients can start putting them in whenever they're ready and working on the release. Does that make sense?
This might be harking on an earlier conversation. If we just did the testnet blocks, but then didn't set the mainnet block until we know a little bit more how the testnets goes, or do we want to do them all kind of nowish?
I guess one question I'd love to get a sense of is if we run the test nets and it's we need to push mainnet out by a week, would that be a big deal, or is that kind of okay?
So I think a handful of weeks is okay. The only challenge, it's basically the same challenge in why you want to hard code all the blocks at first. Some users might download a version which has London enabled only for testnets that they think they've upgraded, but there actually isn't a block number in for mainnet. So you kind of get the similar thing where if we do push back the fork block, it's not the end of the world, but you risk having some people think that they've upgraded. They don't read the blog posts or the announcements and whatnot, and then they're on a version which has the wrong fork block for mainnet. So it's not something I think we should do unless we find a major issue or we realize we're absolutely not ready. But it's also not impossible.
And the other end is if we have the mainnet blocks in and everyone's installed the clients, and then we need to delay 2 weeks, then there could be a part of the network that's splitting 2 weeks earlier than the other one if everyone has to change the client that they have.
Yeah, we usually avoid hard coding mainnet blocks together with the testnet blocks. So we add testnet blocks numbers first, and then we release after the first testnet's going successfully, release the next version with mainnet set. Historically, we've seen mainnet block number changing until the last weeks, and we didn't want to risk that. Not switching felt for us less risky than switching in the wrong block and trying to revert that.
Yeah, that's totally something we can do for London. If people are more comfortable with that, we can wait, up till the Robston fork, and then, we can keep the current block tentatively, and if everything goes well, use that one. But yeah, if people want to wait before we hard code it in clients, to see that the Robston and maybe the Gordy fork go smoothly, do people prefer that?
Yeah, that's probably that's what we've done historically in Geth as well, I think.
Okay, so let's use let's basically use the current testnet blocks that were proposed. I see Thomas has a comment about the mainnet block to add one more zero. So anyways, we can kind of bike shed around that one offline. But yeah, let's use the current testnet blocks for Robston, Gordy, Rinkeby. Assuming the fork goes well, we'll basically have a fork right after we'll have an awkward dev call right after the Robston fork. So we can decide there if we feel comfortable setting the mainnet block. Yeah. Cool.
Before we move on out of the London stuff, so someone brought up that in order for wallets to correctly do transaction speedup, they need to know what the clients are going to accept and gossip for transaction speedup. And so there is value in us kind of coming to some general consensus on what each client requires for speeding up a transaction. Speeding up a transaction mean replaced by fee, basically. And so I guess the first question is do clients have the various clients decided what you guys are going to do for that yet?
Yeah,
No.
we were calculating the miner's fee. I mean, like the payment to the miner as the selection process for which transactions to evict and which to keep.
Okay, so you calculate how much is going to the miner specifically, and then you sort by that, and then you kick out the. Okay. Anyone else?
I think for the Geth implementation specifically that Light Client and I helped with, we had like a little bit of an internal debate. Like I personally kind of preferred the specifically for replacement, right? Not for general eviction, but just for replacement from the same sender, same nonce. I think there are two alternative approaches. You can either basically enforce like a bump of both the fee cap and the tip, or you can basically just require a bump of the tip, as long as, of course, the tip remains small or equal to the fee cap. And I think both basically work. It should just be like client should ideally just do the same thing, because otherwise the mempool gets fractured, which is not ideal.
Doesn't the latter, if you just bump the miners portion, doesn't that allow someone to spam a transaction that they know won't get mined? Because you set your fee cap to 0, and then you can just bump the miner fee over and over and over again.
So
we don't allow transactions with a tip greater than the fee cap in the mempool.
Exactly. So basically, like because we already, it's basically the same situation that we have today without 1559. We enforce like a minimum tip or like a minimum today, of course, minimum gas price, and so basically it is like there's a minimum of how costly like the first bump is, and then each subsequent bump will be more costly. And similarly today, if the gas price is at, I don't know, 60 gwei or like 100 gwei or something, and your transaction right now is a gas price of 1, then you can bump a couple of times before you'll get close to the inclusion zone. And this basically property will kind of be the same afterwards. Basically, like but given that like your total fee cap must be higher than the tip, basically every time you bump the tip, you kind of also have to keep up the total cap, and so you're getting closer and closer to inclusion. And so it's basically the same as it is today.
Okay, so I think the key there is that you do not gossip transactions that have a tip higher than the cap. Is that correct? Under any situation?
That's correct.
Yes.
I think technically they are includable in the block, but at least the Geth implementation right now would not gossip them.
Whatever we decide on, I definitely do think we should make that available to wallets as soon as possible. So once each of the teams has decided what your strategy is going to be, please share it somewhere. It can be in like the 1559 the channel in R&D Discord or somewhere, and so they can get those collated and out to wallets. because they will need to kind of use the lowest common denominator strategy for dumping if they want to be able to gossip across the whole network. It's like whatever the most strict client is what they'll have to follow.
So yeah, on that, Trent, I don't know if Trent's on the call. Yes, he is. Trent is going to be working on a sort of cheat sheet for wallets regarding 1559. So if people can just dump that into Discord, Trent and I can definitely keep track of the responses and share that with wallets.
Maybe as a follow-up, unless specifically on the replacement there was anything less to discuss, but like as a follow-up, I think a couple of months ago, we talked about the kind of like the rules around mempool in general as well, and I kind of looked into that as well. And I think while it's not consensus critical, it's also valuable to have this be in sync as well between different clients. Otherwise, again, there's this fractured situation where different clients keep different transactions in mempool and evict different ones, and then that's just like really inefficient because you might re-gossip transactions a lot and so on and so on. And so I just wanted to kind of ask what the best process would be to maybe offline or something, just double check that clients ideally do the same. And if they don't, kind of maybe come to agreement or something. Like what would be the best way of just kind of reaching out to all clients? Maybe
we can discuss this on Discord and, on the 1559 dev channel. I think some folks are actually discussing this right now. Ansgar, I shared the write-up you had done that kind of explains in more detail what you basically went over just now. So perhaps it's useful to like have people look at that and explain how they differ or like don't differ from it. And yeah, we can definitely document the differences and yeah.
Sounds good. Then I'll look over it again today and just make sure it's still in sync with what the Geth implementation at least is doing today.
If I can also just make one last comment, the way it sounds like several clients have implemented it is, I think, like the most correct way. You're using whatever the effective gas price of the transaction is. So you're subtracting the base fee and then determining that's how much the miner is going to earn. And that sort of is like what the network deems is the best transaction. But since the base fee is constantly moving, that needs to be recalculated each transaction. And it's not a linear relationship. As you begin to get to the point where transactions become invalid, their fee cap, the base fee goes past the fee cap, you would need to start removing those transactions. So you have to recalculate this ordered list every block. Whereas if you use the fee cap, which is not changing as your ordered list, then you don't need to reorder all transactions every block. And the way that we're doing that with Geth is there's a min heap of transactions. And so you only reheap once the heap has seen some number of removed transactions and structurally needs to be reheaped. So it's not clear it's not clear to me if we can allow the resorting on every block. Generally, I'm trying to avoid any sort of degradation of performance. And so I can run a benchmark to compare how those would look. But that's just the main difference between those approaches.
Also, I would take issue with saying that this would be the most correct way of doing it, because I think the main kind of consideration that went into recommending the fee cap instead of the current effective tip, basically, as a criterion, is just that we expect, like under most normal conditions, like the vast majority of the mempool in 1559 to be below the current base fee, because like there's only on average like one block worth of transactions kind of above the includability zone, basically. And so like, especially for eviction, where we are most interested about the kind of like the least valuable transactions, those will almost always be below includability. So the effective tip right now will always be 0 for them. And just sorting by tip generally doesn't work as well, because usually like the effective tip that you end up paying will be much lower than the tip if the tip is large, but you're below includability, because you'll only barely be able to get in. And so like your effective tip will be small. And so I think actually kind of like the fee cap is the most correct way for sorting, and not the effective tip and not the tip. But again, I think it's probably a better fit for offline, and it's not consensus critical. So it's not kind of like critical to have that be in sync in time for the testnets. But yeah.
And it's also something we can update once 1559 is live, right? So obviously we want like the best behavior that we know of now, but once we actually see usage on the network and how the mempool is working, we can definitely change how transactions are stored based on that.
Yes, I think that's correct.
Cool. Anything else anybody wanted to bring on 1559 or London in general? If not, Light Client had asked for an update on Rayonism and where the merge is at. I see we have Danny on the call. I know you've been on top of that, and I know also a lot of the actually client teams have been working on this. So does anyone want to kind of walk through maybe the past couple of weeks of what happened with Rayonism and where the work related to the merge is at?
Yeah, I can give a quick high level. So there was the Rayonism Nocturne DevNet that launched, I believe, a couple days ago. There's a Block Explorer up and a Fork Monitor up if you want to check it out. I believe all 12 client combinations are working on that, which means there's kind of 4 ETH2 clients and 3 ETH1 clients, and you can mix and match all of them, and they're all running there and running validators, which is very exciting. This was definitely a major success, but also definitely kind of in this prototyping zone. We did not test the fork transition, and we are not testing like historic state sync, which is 2 critical things. Definitely in the wrapping up phase, we validated all the things that we wanted to, but now I think it's time for production engineering on the final things for London and the Altair fork. At the same time, we're working on specifying a couple of the last things and greatly enhancing testing on the spec for the merge spec, based off of some of the stuff we did here and some of the stuff we've just been intending to do. So I think the idea is to shift back towards some other production engineering, get the merge specs in the next iteration, and then once we get Altair and London releases out, shift back into some production engineering here. So DevNet's up. DevNet went really well. DevNet will probably go down early next week, and we will shift back into other things. Post Altair, post London, we'll do some more multi-client testnet stuff and probably have much more of a conversation here on all things. And I guess over the next like couple of all core devs, we can talk more about planning and stuff. There are client teams here. If you all have anything to add, please do. I mean, and otherwise, I can help with any questions if anybody wants to dig deeper on that. Cool. Another thing to note is we're doing some bike shedding. If you'd like to jump in on API transport format. So.
For all those that enjoyed the naming discussion so much, go join the consensus client naming discussion.
And a quick announcement. I think this was shared on another channel, but the merge calls will now be on the same week as the ETH2 calls on Thursday at the same time. So we're going to be doing a 3-week break rather than a 2-week break. This is to try to help with some of the folks that are up pretty late for the ETH2 call and the merge call to kind of stack them together. So we'll do merge and then immediately into the ETH2 calls. ETH2 calls usually aren't very long, usually like 30, 45 minutes, depending on what's going on. So it shouldn't be too bad. So we're going to try that out.
Cool. Thanks for the update. Any clients have anything to add? Okay. That's, oh, Trent, you had a...
Oh, and I want to say huge shout out to Proto. Proto like incepted this Rayonism idea and like did a lot of work. If you were involved in it, you know that Proto's been up day and night making this thing happen. I mean, same to all the engineers, but thanks, Proto.
Sweet. Yeah, Trent, you had you wanted to talk about the 1559 UI call?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I know you mentioned it earlier, but I can just go over it again. And reiterate what you already said, which is similar to the London readiness call we had a week or so ago. We're going to be doing something similar, but focused on people that work on wallets and interfaces. So this would be like MetaMask, Argent, Rainbow, Status, things like that. So if anybody's listening to the call and you work on a wallet, please reach out. So we're going to do two things, which is put together a cheat sheet of basically what you need to know, and hopefully keep it updated as things become more solidified, and just a list of resources that devs can look to. And then there will be a call, I think about in a week, 2 weeks from now. We don't have a time yet, but we'll try to pick a slot that works for everybody who's interested in being involved with this. And we'll just go over what people have been thinking about so far with regards to how they're presenting these new transaction choices to users, and hopefully get people on the same page with what the best practices are. So yeah, like I said, please reach out and just let me know if you'd like to be added to that. I'll be sending out an email probably early next week to figure out a time.
Great.
That's it.
And then in the chat, there was one more comment. So Piper has been working on a core dev apprenticeship program to get folks who want to start working on core development for Ethereum to work on it over the summer and receive a stipend for that work. There's a blog post that went out on the Ethereum blog yesterday. So if you just go to blog.ethereum.org, it's the most recent post. It's called Core Dev Apprenticeship. So if anyone listening is interested in that, there's all the information in the post about how to apply, and Piper can answer all of your questions about the program. Cool. Anything else anybody wanted to discuss or give it a shout out to?
I wanted to say one thing.
Go.
That so I've been slowly handing things over to Tim over the last couple of months for the hard fork coordination role. I've done it for about a year, almost 2 years. It feels like, and I'll be moving into some other things. So this will be like my last call as that, and I'll be leaving the EF as well. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do next, but part of it's probably going to be EIP stuff because I keep getting drawn into it, and I like working with you guys. So it's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, thanks for all your work.
Thank you, James.
Yeah. And yes, there's definitely more than enough work on the EIP side if you're not sure what to do.
I'm going to try and wait at least 4 weeks before jumping into things, but I can already tell I'm excited about stuff. So
yeah, that's a good call to take some time off. Cool. Anything else anybody wanted to bring up? Okay, well, thanks everybody. I can't believe we finished half an hour early given everything that was on the agenda. So yeah, I appreciate it. And I will see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.